I can hear you. I call the Honourable Member Melissa Lee.
I move that the question be now put.
No. I'm going to call the Honourable Member Jacinda Ardern.
Chair, that's very kind of you. Mr Chair, I want to speak to some element of the commencement dates at the beginning of my what will be a short address, because I do think that there's quite a bit of thought has gone into the transitional provisions and a commencement date based on some of the factors that have already been pointed out by my colleagues around the additional burden on the IRD system that this new formula will provide. And I think it's only right that we give the system time to creak under the weight of this new complex system. So we, as a Select Committee, did recommend an amendment which would allow the deferring the implementation of the child support formula from the 1st of April 2013 to the 1st of April 2014, and we suggested a movement of payment and penalty charges that saw it going out to April 2015. And very explicitly stated in the commentary at the beginning that we consider this delay by 1 year necessary to accommodate the bill's legislative timeline, because of course if we were implementing it in April 2014, that's not a lot of time from the time that it will have its final reading, but also to allow Inland Revenue sufficient time to prepare. I'd say that probably was the more weightier of the reasons. But I'm also interested, given based on these commencement dates and the amount of time IRD needs to prepare, that will be computer systems, but obviously in the bill we've also talked about the extra burden on staff, the 15% increase in the amount of time that staff will be spending on these new provisions. And my question to the Minister would be, will that be coming out of baselines for IRD, or will we be seeing an extra investment into IRD to enable them to deal with these changes? Because it's not like we've seen there's any capacity in many of our frontline services to take that extra strain. The government has been very vigilant in its so-called value for money exercise, which basically means that our departments themselves are straining under the weight of continuing a full agenda of work, be it policy development or just carrying out the requirements of day-to-day governance, whilst also slashing back their ability to have any capacity to deal with extra things like this. So I would be really interested if the Minister could tell us, given that we've needed to switch our commencement date by a year, given we know that it'll cost $91 million to implement, given we know it will increase the strain on staff by 15%, how are we dealing with that? And that $91 million, I haven't asked the question of whether or not that's being budgeted for and in which budget it will be seeing those transitional provisions. Mr Speaker, I am also interested in speaking to the title of this bill. I'm always aware that anyone listening to this part of a debate in the House would be somewhat confused by this tradition we have at the end of the debate of a bill to suddenly then talk about random separate names for titles for a bill, and there is a very good purpose. There is a very good purpose for it that Mr Sabin doesn't seem willing to accept at this point in the debate, and that is it does enable us to try and capture the essence of what a bill should be about, and whether or not it gives us a chance to say whether or not a bill has achieved what might be the expectations of the public, the bill's objective. And I think it's probably, Mr Sabin's now making gagging faces. I don't know whether or not the cameras capture some of the facial expressions we seem to be receiving on the side of the House. But it gives us an opportunity to see whether or not we've actually achieved the objectives we set out to. And there was a bit of debate at the beginning as to whether or not, if this bill is surely about the welfare of the child, whether or not we are achieving that through this child support bill. And unfortunately, it's our contention that we don't believe we have. The focus, despite the bill being called the Child Support Amendment Bill, is very much on setting a mediation process that's based on a calculation regime for parents who are unable to resolve outside of IRD their own payment system. And as I've already said, there is There is a greater level of satisfaction outside of the IRD system with arrangements that are able to be set up. We know that from survey work that's been done. So is this really solely about child support? If it were, we've already contended we would probably have seen a paramountcy principle in this bill. In a sense, then, could we almost rename it the Child Liability Bill? Because that's how it feels like we've treated kids in this bill. It's more like they are a liability that we must make an assessment on who the greater liability sits with, rather than it being about the support of the child and the welfare of the child legitimately. Mr. Chair.
I call the honourable member Cam Calder.
I move the motion be now put.
No.